Kyriacou is an architect who has worked with harmonic proportion for a very long time, I think. Not that I'm saying he's old or anything. And but also with sound, the harmony. Sorry, Krista. With the harmony of sound and the linkage of sound in the harmony of the design of buildings. I don't really know what I'm talking about, so I'm going to hand over to Christian Kyriacou.
Wonderful, good morning. Well, this is going to be an interesting one, a bit of an experiment, because I've not used keyboard before with a group. So we'll see what unfolds. Music of buildings. So I'm just going to take you on a little journey to Canada, where I spent many weeks over the years, and working with the equine. And you might wonder, yes, am I a horse whisperer or a house whisperer? But actually, they are totally interconnected, because the equine work with the heart. That's what it's all about, the heart harmonics. And that's the sacred geometry of the heart, the golden mean spiral, our double DNA helix, and so on. So it's all about the embedding of these energies in the land, the buildings, the creatures, and so on. So just experience the next, it's a very short video clip, and just allow the horses to talk to you. Aren't they magical? You feel their power and their connection to the land. Quite extraordinary. And the horses work from the heart, and they're working with sound and sacred geometry. So this is where the whole thing links in. And particularly at this gateway centre that Liz runs, she discovered that the horses, when people would go for retreats, and they would lie down and, you know, how we process stuff in retreats and, you know, get stuff out. And she noticed that the horses would come up and start to work with the people. So she put proper healing couches out, and the horses would actually come and go straight to the heart of the matter. They would know exactly what the people needed, and they would start working with them and healing. I had a session myself, and what was quite extraordinary was how I could sense the geometry. You get 2 or 3 horses being the lead workers, but the rest of the herd, there's 14 of them on 320 acres. They're wild, but they're tame. Possibly shamans from a past life, but we'll come on to that as to why. And what I could see was the geometry fields. They were actually manipulating the geometry fields coming towards me, and I could feel them. And, you know, working with space anyway, I see sacred geometry, unsacred geometry in space when I'm working anyway, and I hear the music of buildings. So that's my perception. It's audio and visual at the same time of the invisible world. So having these horses kind of working and aligning, it's like, yeah, it's geometry. It's, I mean, healing for me, it's not about healing, it's about realigning ourselves to source. So anyone who says they're a healer, it's like, what are you actually doing? If you're not reminding people of their true connection to the universe. So, but that was actually quite fun filming that, and I've got a lot more footage, which you can see on the website. And we wanted to get them charging because Liz was doing a talk over here for a conference. So I put together a video slideshow for her. They said, right, we've got to get these herds kind of running towards you and you're going to film them. I thought, okay, so how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to go behind the hill where the horses are, you stand there, and I'm going to scream and shout at them, and they're going to charge towards you. And I thought, thank you, Liz. And some of those shots, I mean, those horses were passing by me, and I just had to just stand still and trust. And I have had a fear of horses in the past, but it's kind of working with them. And they can read you like they know exactly your fear. It's either love or fear. They work with love. And they will show your fear. So amazing creatures to work with. Going to the land, the other kind of major connection just with this piece is the husband's an architect, and he took on a project in Hawaii, and it's a 1-mile beach, probably the last undeveloped piece of land on the island, one of the islands. I won't mention where because confidentiality, and so I need to be a little bit careful. But the stories are quite amazing, what really goes on. I'm happy to talk privately about it. But and as soon as he took on the job in Hawaii, all the animals started fighting each other. And there were 2 beautiful llamas, and the dogs started to attack them. So it had created something that, you know, he'd taken on the contract. And this is all about contract. When I'm working with people, it's like you bought a house, you've gone into energetic karmic contract. And so what he'd done was taken on the job to develop 170 houses on this site with 1 house to make 170. And my job was to, well, first of all, sort out what was going wrong. And as I tuned in, of course, all the ancestors were seriously angry at what was going on. No one had asked them. Nobody had asked permission. And, you know, they're warriors, these ancestors, and they were fighting back, and right back to here. And so everything was going on. So there is no time and space in truth, as we know, in the quantum physics world. So whatever we think or do here happens, you know, hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away. So, so I worked with that, brought a sense of resolution to it. Then I got officially asked to take on the project and work with it. And so I dowsed over the plan, remote dowsing, and got all the energy lines, and particularly the vortexes, very powerful earth energy vortexes. And of course I can't show you where they are because you recognise the plot probably, but and there are about 7 or 8 of these, and you don't build on them. well, you build sacred sites or temples or Stonehenges, but you don't live on them because the energy is too much. And if they're spinning one way, it's going to charge the energy up, and if it's spinning downwards, the yin, it's going to actually deplete your energy and make you very sick. So this is all the geometry of the land. So it's understanding all that and working with it. So drew all this mapping out and sent it over to them, and they completely redesigned the whole scheme, avoiding. And they came back and saying, "Can we edge into this circle a bit?" I said, "No." No. And everything went really smoothly. So job done. But they insisted I went over to a present for the developer, and I thought, that's a tough one. So I got flown over to Hawaii for a week, and had great fun. I mean, all I did was verify what I'd already drawn, in the office. So. But it just shows the honour and respect for the land is absolutely crucial. So, horses, music, technology, here we go. Right, so the elements of music. There's 3 elements of music: harmony, rhythm, melody. So harmony is about proportion, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Rhythm is that energy, that pulse. And melody is that weave of consciousness. It's the magic that comes from harmony and rhythm. So, when we just have one note, there's no harmony there because it's just one note. It's that unity, that oneness. But when we have a reflection, which is a duality, it's that first step from unity to duality, the circle to the double circle, the Vesica Pisces, which we'll see some graphics of. That first movement, we actually create a relationship. So harmonics are about relationships. So if you wanted to know about relationships, it's all in music. So that's our first movement from unity to duality. And all of us flip from, well, actually, by coming to these conferences, doing the healings, doing what we do in life, are we not seeking unity? The journey home, the pilgrimage, Homer's Odyssey, which is like my favourite, okay, it's Greek and all that, but, and all the obstacles on the journey. But what is that journey? It's about looking for who we are, searching for who we are. But the great joke is, we are already fully realised. But we just don't realise it. And so we go through all these kind of processes to actually find out who we are, but it's already there. And actually the work is actually realising what the onion skins are and just shedding them, letting them go. And all that's left is you, but that can be quite scary. Well, it is for me anyway. So, and in fact those 2 notes are the same, so it's not a relationship yet. But if we go, so we have a harmony there, 2 notes, we have a harmony. Okay. So that's, and in architecture we look at 1 to 2, which are the temple proportions, the ancient Egyptian, Greek temples, because they were taught by the Egyptians. That's your octave. And within the 1 and 2, we actually have all the proportions of the universe within that. Then the halfway, what's called the perfect fifth, that's actually a 2 to 3 proportion, and so on. We're not going to get very mathematical because I know a lot of people begin to shut down with that, but okay, and then we've got the rhythm. So when we so we've got the harmony, and then we've got the rhythm. And this is stuff we all recognise, but it's good to actually separate the elemental parts of music. So the harmony itself will create an emotion anyway. From a major does that do?
Sadness, melancholy.
Sadness. It shifts the emotion. And that's the whole purpose of music, is to actually take us from where we are to somewhere else. And particularly the Gregorian chants and Hildegard of Bingen, that magical weave, which is probably one of your favourites, Karen, I would imagine, medieval. And it's that weave, which is the last one, the weave of consciousness. And the extraordinary thing is, any one of you who might be having compositions come through, you know that the melody line, when you're composing or being composed through, the melody line comes from the harmony and the pulse. And if you really listen to what do you hear? What do you hear arising from? A tune. Some of you probably recognise what I'm going to play. But if not, there is a tune that begins to arise. Because it's already there in the ether. It's all there, the knowledge is there. We're just drawing it down. Will just arrive from that rhythm. And when you listen to the great composers, and for me Mozart, Vivaldi are some of the most conscious works ever created, it will actually take you on that journey. It will realign your harmonics. It will show you who you are not, which is really powerful stuff. So that's kind of a little bit on the construction. And that's Robert Flood's kind of design of a musical building containing all these elements that we've spoken of. So if you want to get into the mathematics, these are kind of all the proportions that we spoke of, the 1 to 2 and the 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5 and so on. And buildings can be designed to that. So what happens when we design a building to a particular proportion and we walk into it? What's it going to do to us?
Resonate.
Resonate to what? What emotion is it going to bring up? Which I've given you the answer. It's going to change our emotions, isn't it? It's going to affect our emotional state, our elemental balance. Different for all of us. Now, this is the harmonic proportions of the Great Pyramid, the Grand Gallery, and I don't quite know how I'm going to break it to you, but I'm going to get you to sing that at the end. So we'll work on that a bit later. But so feel the fear. It's only love or fear, isn't it? Yeah. It was beautifully touched on earlier. So Chartres Cathedral, for me, that is the one building to go to that holds the entire knowledge of the universe at every level, from a geomancy point of view, sacred geometry, the 7 levels that were spoken of earlier, Jeremy. The 7 liberal arts was one of the initiation processes, which was a Platonic thing brought in and used in school at Chartres. And of course this totally relates to what we're doing, because you've got the trivium and the quadrivium, if that's familiar to you. And the trivium is the language part, the grammar, dialectic and rhetoric. And we can look at that in more detail some other time perhaps. And then you've got the quadrivium, which is number, geometry, astronomy stroke astrology, because they were all the same at the time, and music. So all architects had to be trained in the 7 liberal arts. So if you have no harmony in your soul, what are you going to create? Either you're creating from ego, or the need of the land, the client, the time, and so on. So it's really important for anyone in that design world to really just get out of the way, and this is just a vehicle for processing the magic of the universe and embedding it into the land, into buildings, to remind people ultimately of who they are. And if we do that, then equals happiness. Isn't that what we all want at the end of the day? Joy, happiness. So, Magical Building had lots of amazing experiences here. And one of them, which is the symbol of the golden key on my book, in the middle of the geometry, was a download. Actually, this was talk about cafes, I love it. I was in a cafe over the road, and actually in total despair, because lived in the cathedral, this was about 2002, lived in it for 4 days, and I just wanted the knowledge. Was I going to give in it? No. So over in the cafe with one of the ladies, just 4 of us, and I was hitting the gall bars, because I smoked at the time, and really despair. She said, "What's the problem?" I said, "Well, I'm just not getting it." She said, "Have you asked?" Duh. That's my work, that's what I say to other people, that's what I do in people in houses. I didn't ask the most fundamental question. And I didn't have to ask, because the realization of asking. Then I started getting this extraordinary holographic download of symbols just coming straight down through the crown. I thought, whoa. And it become, I recognized them but didn't know them. Yeah, that sort of feeling. There was a knowing, but it wasn't a head recognition. And they cascaded so fast, I just had to get my head out of the way, the mind out of the way, and just let it fall into the heart, and it just totally blew me apart. And that was like one of those moments of, okay, absolute jam. Then I went back into the cathedral and sat in front of the south window. And the geometry started to dance, that magical glass, that blue glass, which is very unique, as Karen was saying yesterday. And I just knew it was resetting my DNA, it was resetting my entire reality pattern. And it just totally and utterly just blew me apart. There was nothing left of me, ego. I've still got a little bit, I need a little bit. Otherwise you can't tell jokes in the pub, can you? So, there's just tears streaming down my eyes, and these French ladies coming up and saying, in French, I know what they were saying, but I got the gist of it, So I lapped it up, But I could see the geometry of the cathedral after that. It was like, because you've got the north window, which is actually golden mean ratio, and the south window, which is hexagram. So feminine, pentagram, hexagram, masculine. And these two, I could see them spinning, and in the centre of the cathedral is where they spun and meet and unite the masculine and feminine, which is the entire story of the universe, isn't it? Yeah? Male, female, yin yang, dark night, whatever you want to call it. So it's that reminding, in retrospect, back to that point of unity. That's an extraordinary cathedral. And I think the 7 levels are on the front. Are they, Karen? Is it on? It's on chart. Yeah. So harmony. So again, just a few examples of the proportions. This is the hyperstar hall at Karnak in Egypt. And you can see that's a 1:2 ratio. Again, you get the octave, and you've got the square. And of course, we've got the pyramid, which So in fact, I think just have a little warm-up. What we're going to do is just give me when you have that realization moment, what sound comes out? Okay, give me your biggest now carry on ah-ing. Come on, give it. You want to be in my choir? Okay, so that one note, actually let's hit that. Just stand up, let's like really get that, you've been sitting down all weekend. So that's the one, the square, the one-to-one. So we'll do that again. Then when I indicate 2, we're going to hit the octave. So let's just say, this is not a sexist thing, the guys stay on the 1 and the ladies go to the octave. We're doubling the vibration, but don't think about it, just, you know what an octave is. Yeah? So we all start on 1. And everything in between. Okay. Yeah. And again, all on 1. Magic. How does that feel? Expand, you can hear when we hit that ratio, expansion. So space, sound, number, emotion are all totally interlinked. So by going into a space that has that ratio will allow expansion. Okay. I'm just breaking you in gently here, that's the easy bit. Okay. Right, I mean there are so rhythm. So when we get columns, that creates a rhythm. And in fact, any artist will know that you work towards a vanishing point, or in graphics, yeah. And that vanishing point, somewhere there, is actually you, yourself. And so the mathematical gap between these columns recedes by a harmonic proportion. It's a musical proportion. And also the height of these columns, visually, if you measure them, they are receding by a harmonic proportion. So when we look at perspective, we're actually visualizing harmony. Yeah? Now, we don't need to look at columns for that. Anywhere you look, what's the implications of it? Wherever we look, there is perspective. Therefore, whatever we're looking at is harmony. I mean, isn't that an extraordinary reality? It's not a concept. It's what it is. And we can hear it. We've just been hearing it. So visually, that's a harmonic progression. Now, when you get a temple, and this is at Epidavros, one of the early ancient Greek healing temples, and this is the tholos, and that's the golden mean spiral. Again, that's all based on the heart harmonic. And when you sit in that energy, it just reminds you of your double DNA helix, your connection to source. You don't have to do anything. It's like when you go into the ogive arch of a cathedral, it's actually a pentagram design, and as you pass through the door of the cathedral, what's it going to do? Remind you of who you are. It kind of resets your code, so you can go in clean and fresh for the procession through the building. Then of course you've got the 24 columns and 12 columns, and if you look at that or focus your attention in the centre, there is a pulse, there is a rhythm. They're just, yeah. I don't know if you can hear it, feel it, know it, but it's doing that. But it's doing it silently. Actually, it's actually quite loud, if you can hear it in the etheric world. But it's actually having an effect. Now, when you focus that with a stone circle and embed it into stone, wow, then I'm sure some of you see geometries when you go to stone circles, but they're geometric. And in fact, they're three-dimensional, fifth-dimensional geometries. They're not flat. I would draw them flat, but they're actually, it's not crop circles, they're actually three-dimensional when you look at them. Yeah. So when they hit the top of the three-dimensional etheric grid, it actually blows the digital cameras, because they're quite peaky there. Yeah. So that's the melody, and I don't know what his problem is, but anyway. So, gateways. This has been touched on in a way yesterday, and really this whole thing of transition between two spaces, you know, the gateway, the invisible gateway, the asking permission at the entrance, the portal, you know, whether it's in a building or in a landscape, you're asking the diva of the site, the genus loci. And this is what the amazing thing about the door is. It's a statement of, and in the older buildings, the traditional buildings, you always have a sill at the bottom of the door. Can't see any here, but yeah, there we go, like a sill. So you have to step over, and that's actually to contain the energetic geometry, but we don't do that anymore, it's just straight, flat. But all ancient buildings, temples, will always have a raised sill, because it kind of frames and holds the energy. Now, I was first introduced to invisible temples. It's another whole workshop I do. It's a day workshop on etheric gateways and invisible temples. And they're all over the place, and they're coming up more and more now. And this was in about 2000, California. And three of us just went for a wander, as you do, and we sat looking, wrong button, and I saw this golden temple begin to come out of the ground. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, I wasn't on anything, or, you know, but there it was. And we looked at each other, and the other two were seeing exactly the same thing. So when that happened, that's a good thing about groups, you know, you're not losing it if everyone's seeing it. And you could see this golden temple coming out. But it kind of needed our witnessing, our beingness, to allow that to come forward. It's already there in some dimension. And so this whole thing of multi-dimensional universes depends where we're tuning in at any particular time. One person can see spirit in the room, the other person isn't going to see them, depending on your tuning. I'm sure you find that, David. So it's what world we train ourselves to kind of tune in and work with. So then that kind of got me into looking much further. And this is St Margaret from the 316. And for years I would drive through here, and that's Richmond Hill on the river. I would drive past here, and I'd go into a kind of zap zone and kind of do a re-wake past here, and then I started to investigate it more, and this is actually the entrance gateway to Richmond, and this side is St Margaret's. So we have invisible gateways, invisible boundaries, the beating of the bounds, which Eric touched on yesterday, and that's a tradition of going around the village boundary, actually beating and creating that energy. It's like, that's our boundary, you know. But what are we doing? We're creating, not only in the minds of the people, but in the etheric grid that surrounds the village or the town or the city gate. even if the city gate's not there, the wall is still there unless it's been zeroed back to 0 point. Otherwise, I'm often finding myself going through places, and rods are great for doing that. So if I just go through here, there's nothing here, and anyone can dowse it if you like. Now, if I create an etheric gateway where the keyboard is, I've now created a gateway wall, yeah, and the rods will measure it. Now, any one of you can pick these rods up and you'll get that reading, yeah? And that won't ever go away until just collapse the fields. Once you collapse the energetic fields down to 0 point, it's gone. So what implications does that have? When we demolish a building, has it gone? And many times I've worked in buildings and it's not in the building I'm standing in. And there's one example in New Jersey, and did a whole movie on it, and it was like the top of a barn, and the house had burnt down, and they rebuilt it as a proper house, and this space was exactly where there was stuff going on, you know, abuse and that, and I was still seeing it, but it wasn't in the house that it was in, but it was in the etheric space in three-dimensional form up in the attic. And so to bring that event to closure, first it needs someone to see it, witness it, experience it, feel the emotion, bring the story to rest. That's the work. So these etheric energy fields are, the more you look at, you become aware of them. There are so many. So this is kind of going a little bit backwards. We've talked about this. This is the royal portal at Chartres, and this is where the Vesica Piscis has Christ child. So in my sense, you've got the mother, the father, and the Christ child, and it's that portal into other dimensions, and giving that birth, giving birth. And we see this in many representations of the Vesica. But it's that movement from unity to duality. But the only purpose of looking at this is to remind us of that and bring us back to unity. It's through the enjoyment of the creation world. Of course, you'll recognise the well at Glastonbury. And this is actually a picture from 1973. Of course, crop circles. Great, just reminding us, hey, this is what it's all about, guys. Talk about the village boundary. This is a house I worked on, and this one here. And this was the village boundary, and it actually goes through their garden. And if you go through that with the dowsing rods, you actually pick up the village boundary. It's still there. It's not now because it's been zeroed. But just an interesting thing here about houses talking to me. I drive down here, and all I could hear as I saw the houses, shouldn't have been built here, shouldn't have been built here. It's like really confused, and it was built on a portal energy, and lots of stuff coming through, and dark energies, and stuff happened on this building that was there on that site. And I see like a video replay, and I see it all here, like in front of me, and what's happening, and you commune with the building, the spirit of the building, the spirits, the entities, the darker matter, etc. And you kind of get to understand what the bigger picture is. So to me, that's important to understand and help the owner to understand, because it's their story, it's not mine. Well, I've been attracted to the person to work with, so there's an element of connection. And it's about empowering the person to actually look at what their karmic story is, why they've chosen, or why the house has chosen them, which is perhaps more correct, or through resonance that come together like a relationship, because it's about the next part of your journey. And there's no wrong house to move into, because wherever you move, that's what's been chosen for the next part of your journey. But if you don't kind of get it, or you resist it, or you've been drawn to one aspect of it and don't take on the whole picture, that's when problems happen and everything starts to get fragmented. And if energy in the space gets fragmented, the heart gets fragmented. We get sick. So the idea is to actually read, get the person to actually come to what I call the aha moment and actually realise what it is that they're there for. And often it's either personal healing, or they've chosen a house that has cancer because they have a propensity for that, and so they're drawn to the cancer. The geopathic lines, I don't worry about all that, because you can come into alignment with anything negative. If you're in alignment with it, it does not harm you. I don't get rid of geopathic stress. It was there before us, before the buildings. We have no right to get rid of the energy structure, the blood veins of the earth. It's to respect it and honour it, but we don't. We just chuck buildings on it. So if we come into resonance with it, with the heart of the people who have taken on the contract of the house, the land, and you bring the heart harmonic into resonance with the heart of the space and the energy lines, and there is a way of actually doing that very, very quickly, then everything goes, I feel at home. Everything's fine. And you go from the most horrendous crossings of a fragmented house where they're spinning and doing all sorts of stuff, and when the heart harmonics are like, that's extraordinary. And so it's never about getting rid of anything. I mean, what right do we have to get rid of? It's like, let's not face our shadow. Look at the shadow. As David was saying, and I'm interested to see where you go with that, because it's like deeper and deeper into, it's us at the end of the day. You can't deny the shadow part, it's all part of the balance. This is like resonance through time. I love this story. And the chap who bought it in 1934, it wasn't until he started developing it that he realised it was his ancestor in 1201, 800 years before him, that founded the abbey. I mean, that resonance of harmonic resonance through time that brings us back. And I know this was touched on yesterday on various things. Extraordinary. Loads of orbs in the basement, of course. I'm doing a whole talk on orbs, by the way. It's another slideshow. Mind you, the feedback I got from, I don't know if you saw the Caduceus article on orbs I did a couple of articles ago, but people are saying you need a PhD to understand what I've said. It was all kind of quantum physics and how the geometry, and I said, well, I study quantum physics. But there are nice orbs and there are angelic orbs, and there's some really nasty orbs as well. Yeah. I think you're saying that, David, as well. It's like energies come in all sorts of packages. They're not nicey. Embrace the shadow, I think is the right. Killer attics. Oh. Actually, I'm not quite sure why I left that one in, but. Well, actually, when houses turn bad, there might be a video clip after this. I'm not sure if I've taken it out, but attics can kill, and I've seen this because they fragment your energy. Actually, if the slide is after this, it will save me telling you about it. No, it's not. Okay, but it's a video clip, and it's a tape recorder, and this is actually a real recording on my answer phone. I've still got that and made it into part of a movie. And she's saying, oh, help Christian, I've got trouble, my son's just jumped off the roof. 3 floors up, he jumped out of the attic window. They bought the house, developed it, and they built into the attic, and he slept under all the cutting beams. Cutting chi and feng shui, anything that's cutting will fragment your energy. So this is where geometry comes into it. I can see all the people who are living in attics, and it's real, but and it opened up. Now, geometry opens up portals into other dimensions. Yeah, Plato says it, so it must be true. So certain geometries will open up, and depending on what they open up, and if you open up into the darker realms, and he was hearing voices saying, get a shotgun, shoot your family, which he didn't do, which it's hard to get hold of one. I've never tried, but... and another voice said, get on the third floor window and jump. And he did. He lived to tell the tale, and I've got that on record, and broke everything in his body. But that's what happens. Now, the question I would say is, why did you choose to sleep in that space? What resonance? What you have a propensity for sabotage. Yeah? What is it we're avoiding in life? Where's our journey taking us? You know, there's no right or wrong, no judgments. That's how it is. And it's about understanding that story of why does someone choose to live anywhere, let alone in a damaging environment. So, that's the north window of Chartres, and you can see these very unusual. I don't think there's another one I've come across, but you can superimpose the golden mean spiral over that. I don't think. Oh yeah, there we go. Good. Yeah. So again, what we've got to do is look at the window, and it will remind you of what your heart harmonics are. So, language of buildings, there's harmonic codes embedded in all these ancient buildings. Quite extraordinary. Again, like the Parthenon, that's actually the golden mean ratio, which we'll come on to more. And of course, nature is that explosion of energy, always from the centre. Everything comes from the centre. And it's the centre of a geometry that holds a code. And the code is activated through sound. So all creation is created through sound. So if we take this room, for example, it's not a cube, but it's a rectangle. Now the centre of the room would be what's called the spota point, the point in Sanskrit, the point that holds the code. And the code, in an unmanifest form, waiting to be activated through intention and sound, which is why the witness is so important, will say, mathematically, it's like radii go out at that angle, so into sacred geometry, to the corners and stop at those 8 corners. And those 8 corners are the node points. And it's the node points that matter in architecture. The walls are just the framework, are just the illusion of reality. It's the node points that you activate. So, in any space, you can actually change the feeling of the space by pulling in through yourself and creating invisible geometries. Yeah? And holding them in that space and actually manifesting them in a sense of embedding them. But then that space will feel different. So, and so plants show this beautifully, that explosion and chaos of dimensional gateways. It's all the same stuff, just different scales. So this is a symbol on the front of the book, and of course it's got the hexagram, it's got the Vesica Piscis, and the columns, the rhythm, and it's a lighthouse in Catalonia. And I kind of measured it while I was on holiday. It's like I do these things, time to pass the time, and. Okay, this is an amazing one, King's College Chapel, Cambridge, and this is Root 3 geometry, which is one of the most sacred geometries. The golden mean, they're irrational geometries, 1.73, and the numbers never end. And the golden mean is 1.61803, and they can't be calculated, they can't be drawn by calculation. It's always done with a compass and a straight edge, which is what the ancient architects did. So it's not a number calculation. And so when we have 1 and 2, or 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so on, they're rational proportions. But sacred buildings are irrational. They're creative. They're the feminine energy. Yeah? Because you have the irrational, creative, golden mean, that's the generative principle of nature. It's the feminine principle, the pentagram. And then hexagram, the fixing, the mineral world, it's all hexagram, geometries. And in fact, when you're reprogramming a house or a building, there's two aspects to it, because every material carries water, an element of water, otherwise it would just go to dust. And therefore water is the hexagram geometry, as we know with Emoto's work and the emotions that affect them. And so you can reprogram it like putting a new bit of software on a laptop. You can reprogram the walls. Then you've got the other element of the invisible geometry in the matrix of space. And it's exactly the same. All space contains geometry. And it's either in sacredness or not. And I can see that when I'm looking into space, or hear it. And it's like an orchestra tuning up when you go into a house and it's all chaotic. So it's about bringing, and how do we bring chaos to harmony?
Why would you want to?
Why would you want to?
Yeah, bring chaos.
Why would you want to bring chaos into harmony? Well, that's a play of creation, isn't it? You've got to have something to do. I mean, otherwise, you know, you've got to play God or Brahma or... but it's processed through the heart, through the golden mean geometry, the sacredness of the heart. And so when you process that, it actually brings chaos and harmony. In fact, there is no chaos in chaos or harmony in harmony. It's actually all one. It just depends how we're looking at it at the time. But that was actually quite another one of my... In the 70s, I went in by accident into the side door, and my eyes and soul were just shot up to the roof of this building. It was like, wow moment, yeah, moment. Absolutely magical building. This is quite an amazing building I went into, and actually got to photograph a lot of the original drawings. They speak for themselves with all the geometries, and it's quite amazing. Delphi, that was touched on yesterday, I think Karen talked about it. Again, really extraordinary. So that's where the Delphi coracle would sit, and that's one representation. They say it's the fumes coming up, or the energy of the land, whatever it is. But it's this kind of ancient thing of we need an agency in between us and God, yeah. But we don't need that now, do we? We know that we can go direct. We have a hotline to the absolute if we choose to dial the right pin number. So this really is, if you've not been to Delphi, is one of the most extraordinary sites. And the last time I went, it's going back quite a long time now, I went, has anyone been and gone up to, yeah? Have you gone right up to the stadium? I didn't know that existed. I was just wandering around, turned into the stadium and went, whoa, straight into a past life, and I could see everyone in the audience and the king and queen and all the elders sitting on the little raised bit. And I thought, what the hell? it was like, whoa. You know that moment when you know, it's not kind of heady, I've been into a past life regression. It's like, you know it, you feel it, you're there. And it's really quite extraordinary. So, and I went up to the elders and said, if you don't stop mucking around with technology, you're going to destroy the earth. I thought, what? And in fact, I had that another process. I did that in Atlantis, same message. And I can see the architecture going up to the chamber, delivering the same message, but the answer was the same. Of course, we know what happened. So these things are still there in the etheric. They're real if we choose to tap in and see them and feel them and work with them. So when we're working with the land, and particularly these ancient sites, the stories are still running. They're embedded in the etheric matrix. The stone holds the framework as well, of course, the earth. But just go and sit with them, be with them, and they'll tell you their story. They'll give you whatever it is, your part of the process in the evolution of raising consciousness, what you can offer. Because that's what we're here for. Service at some level, in raising awareness, raising consciousness. Well, lots of hit points, vertical, you're familiar with vertical ley lines, galactic ley lines are called them. We've got ley lines that go across the Earth, but we've also got galactic ley lines that actually match up to other star systems and planets, depending on the time of day and year and so on. So I was introduced to those in the late 90s. A very weird story, which I'll tell you over lunch perhaps, but where I kind of met an ET kind of connection, flying saucer. So these points, very powerful island, and of course St. Stephen's and the Tor, and Cleopatra's Needle, whose double, they were together, is in Central Park. So they disempower, take the power of, this pair of, and put them in London and New York. Hey, come on, we all know what's going on here. We won't get into that. But yeah. The golden mean, that's what I wanted Sarah to see. So we had Sarah's story yesterday in the Royal Mile, and but they're PowerPoints, and PowerPoints, if you tap into them, you can use them for power and control, and many of them are. But used in a conscious way, you spread. But whatever it's used for, that's judgment. But you can send the power lines. You can send the energy, the intention down the power lines. I found it really dark going down the hill, actually, as I went down and down. But it's a very interesting city, that's for sure. Now that, it may have been built in a good root chakra bit of land, but hey, come on, what's the architecture doing? Harmony, fragmentation, and there are a lot of shenanigans in who actually designed it and why, and it's all, I don't know if you know, okay, I heard that afterwards, but when I saw this, I just like, it's what a building does, what does it do to your energy fields, your emotions? If that makes you feel good, great. But what is going to come out of that parliament? Well, we all know what's been happening recently, but anyway, so here are a few vehicles. How are we doing for time?
We're running into discussion time.
Into discussion time?
Yes.
Well, we've been discussing. Anyway, these are all the tools, the sacred geometries, and actually if you play with these and work with these, they raise and change energy, take you into different fields. Now, language, amazing. Language is proportion, is number, is geometry, is music. And when you have Sanskrit, everything in Sanskrit, all these proportions are very particular, as we can see up here, with the mathematicals. And the language of Sanskrit. Does anyone do any Sanskrit chanting? Yeah. Isha, you find Isha? Sound that? Yeah. So listen to this and see what it does to your energy. Just close your eyes for a minute. Isha va syamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyang jagat tena tyatena punjita magrita kasya sweetanam om shanti shanti shanti. What does that do the Ishu Upanishad. Whatever it is full of the Lord. Claim nothing, enjoy, and hope for 100 years of life doing your duty, proud as you are of your human life. Etc., etc. It's really cool, actually. You know? You feel like getting told off. You know? But it's all about if it reminds you of who you are. Wow. But that's a whole language of Sanskrit alphabet. And you just sound that, it just transforms space. Or just hang it up in your room. Wow. The sound is doing the work quietly. So we've seen, talked about geometry. The heart comes from that golden mean. Yeah, that's where the heart is. You can actually draw that. That's the connection. You can see the golden mean in the peacock. Beautiful representation. The sunflower, absolutely stunning. The cactus had bad press in feng shui in the 90s, yeah? But it's one of the golden mean. Malta, amazing church. I wouldn't know as an architect how to actually build that. Extraordinary. That's golden mean in three-dimensional form. So what's going to happen if you stand under that? It's like I was talking with Sylvia this morning at breakfast. The tower at Rennes le Chateau. I don't have a slide of it here. If you stand in, I think it's the first floor, there's tiles, and there's 64 of them. The codon of DNA. And what happens? If you stand in the middle of that, it's a portal into another dimension. And it happens. All you've got to do is stand there and you take off. Actually, we did this with sound once in Kingston, and the entire group and the room actually turned into a spaceship, an etheric spaceship. It was scary. There was only one person in the kitchen doing the cooking that actually came in at the right moment and oh, that's it, looking down from the top. You see, it's like, yeah, pulsing. The golden mean is not still, except at the centre. The creation, the 3D part of creation, is always in motion, dynamic motion. I went into that one in about 2002, I think that was formed. And these proportions are all the golden mean. That's incarnate in Egypt. The Alhambra, of course, absolute, the mound of creation. Beautiful. And water. Gaudi was really into some interesting magic. I don't know if the church knew it, but I think he trod on both. And they're all energy codes, and his one here embedded, the magic square of 33. So whichever way you add it up, it adds up to 33. And in feng shui, it always adds up to 15. Yeah? So there are lots of these magic squares, encoded geometry. But when they're encoded in the etheric field, I've worked with buildings where something's not working, and all I could see was codes in the foundations. And the owner said this was a Masonic building. And of course that's what they do. You plant the codes into the foundations, whether it's physical, but even if it's physical or a crystal or whatever object, you will encode it with an etheric gem, an etheric geometry with an intent. And that program will continue running. And they've left it running. But the building's now an office building, but it doesn't want to be, because no one asked me if I could be an office building when I was, a Masonic doodah building. So when we go for change of use of a house to a pub or one building to another, we wonder why we have a problem. Because people don't ask the soul of the property or the land, do you want to change? I did a goddess centre in Kingston, and the building was in trauma, had lots of building works going on around it. No one had asked if they wanted to. So had to regress the building right back to 0 point, to 1860-ish, and asked it, well, what's your purpose? To serve the community of Kingston. It was the first building with electricity, but it was also, they used to make medicines and sell them on the ground floor. That's its function. So the conversation was, talking to buildings, strange, are you happy to serve the community of Kingston through being a goddess centre? Oh, okay, yeah, All right, and then brought it right back up to the current time, because the whole thing is bring it up. Buildings are in different dimensions, 200 years, 300, 500 years ago, and we're living all those energies now. And so that, imagine, fragments our reality. And the idea is to bring them into current time, to current reality. It's a lot easier to be in them. Yeah. But again, I would look at why did you choose a building that's got, 5 different time zones, and each one that's been built over different times of the year, of the years, will carry a different message, a different energy, and that cuts up your own energy and reality. So you need a lot more energy to hold your being together. 3 minutes. Okay, well, I'll just flash through these. Well, that's a circle squared. Forget that one. I think you get a sense. And there's the Glen, the magic that Karen was talking about. You've got to go down there if you visit Rosslyn. It's the most extraordinary power down there. The ceiling, which always reminds me of Egyptian, and of course music and all the cymatics through the building. And there's the Glen again. The Tower of Nine, the Templar Towers, and that's a galactic ley line, by the way, the Templar Towers. Actually managed to, every time I go there, I get in, it's locked to the public. Brilliant. I've been in there filming, and as soon as they realise that you know what you're looking at, they kick you out, which is great. But I've got the footage. And of course the language, the coding, it's all... So this is what we were going to sound. You're probably relieved we're not going to. But well, we can
do it in 1 minute.
We could do it. We could do actually. The way to do it. Okay, I'm going to play a note. Whoever wants to. There's about 9 notes. So whoever's drawn to any particular note, just sound it and keep sounding it. Okay. This could be a disaster. Let's give it a go.
Stand up.
No, well, yeah, can you? Yeah. Give it a bit of weather, yeah. Okay. Or just sing about yourself. Probably a bit too low. So that's our first note. Anyone who wants to take that? No, I didn't hear a thing, so all I can hear is this, so I'll go try a bit lower. So we got the idea, yeah? Did anyone tune into any particular note? Let me do them individually. Choose your note from here. So I just keep doing that, and whatever one you want to tune into. Keep sounding that. yourself into the chamber. Let that volume go up. Breathe through it, let it really strengthen. Where did that? What happened?
Up there.
You're up there?
Yeah, it's spiral.
Yeah.
Whoa.
We actually recreated the grand gallery through sound, through harmonics. Now. And that's what music and architecture, geometry is all about. So perhaps we'll look at and listen to our buildings in a slightly different way after today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. That was absolutely inspiring. Really, really fabulous. So much. I mean, it's a very, very broad-ranging talk, I have to say. I had no idea it was going to be so packed. Right, we're about to stop for lunch. Just since Christian's been very modest, he's got his book here, The House Whisperer, which is for sale at the back.
Debt Free TV, in association with GetOutOfDebtFree.org.